What would you do if your HOA president showed up to your burning house before the roof even collapsed? Yeah, I never thought I'd see that either. But there I was, boots planted in the orange dust, watching my own roof curl up in flames, and there stood Bethany Reed from the Ridgewater Lakefront Association, clipboard ready, already blaming me while the firefighters hadn't even unrolled their hoses yet. I know it sounds wild, but the clues were there. Midnight water drops, a fake inspector, blueprints with lines running straight across my land. The night I cracked open that fireproof lockbox, it hit me. These people never expected I'd survive long enough to tell the real story. First thing I remember from that night isn't the sirens, not even the shouting. It's the sharp pop of glass, one window after another shattering out into the cold Montana dark, like somebody taking a hammer to every memory I'd ever tacked onto those walls. The heat slammed out after, thick and greasy, even from way down my gravel drive. Ridgewater Hill was blazing, flames crawling out of the roof, licking up into the night sky like a living thing. Smoke rolled over the pines, sparks catching the wind and scattering who knows where. Fire trucks wedged themselves along the slope, hoses hissing, lights bouncing red and white across the bark. The air tasted like pine sap and wet ash. And then, Mr. Cole. That voice cut right through everything, crisp and out of place. I watched a firefighter, boots pounding my front steps, and those were boards my wife and I sanded and stained until they shone, now black and curling, like old toast. Bethany Reed stood in the headlights, bright coral jacket, hair done up tight, leather folio tucked to her ribs, phone glowing in her other hand, like she was about to give a TED Talk on disaster relief. "Bethany," I said, voice all gravel. "You here to help with the hoses?" She didn't even crack a smile. "I'm here because this affects the entire community. We've had half a dozen calls already, and frankly, Remy, they're questions." Questions? While my house was still burning. She didn't look at me. She looked at the flames. About how this started. About your modifications. About whether your property's a hazard. There it was, the real reason she'd shown up before the fire was even out. Something inside me burned hotter than that fire chewing up my roof. Hazard? "Bethany, this cabin's been here longer than your subdivision." She tilted her head, real sharp, real practiced. "You've been stubborn about our lakefront safety standards. Unauthorized fencing, non-compliant vegetation, that old generator." "Ma'am," Sheriff Marcus Hale stepped in, boots heavy in the ash. "Not the time." She flashed him that tight, fake smile. "Of course, Sheriff. I'm just trying to ensure everyone's safety. If it was accidental, we need to know. And if not," she let the words hang. I'd seen the way she looked at my ridge, my barn, my dam, the strip of land nobody could build on because my deeds said so. "You think I burned my own place down?" I asked, but her eyes had that HOA glint. "It would be irresponsible not to consider all possibilities," she said. "Multiple violations. Fuel storage. Old lumber. The barn that's also on fire." I shot back. She didn't flinch, just tapped her folio. "Combustible materials within 50 feet of any structure. I sent you 3 notices, Remy. You never responded." I'd responded all right, just not to her. The fire marshal had cleared me, written up and signed. Bethany just hadn't liked their answer. A shout went up. "Roof's going." My cabin groaned, flames climbing even higher. "This is exactly what we've feared," Bethany said, eyes a little too bright, almost enjoying it. "If this spreads toward the lakefront, it isn't," I snapped. "Wind's taking it north. You can see that as well as I can." She ignored me, turned to Marcus. "The board will need a full investigation. Liability, insurance, legal action." Marcus just grunted, voice rough. "Not now." And that's when I knew. This wasn't just a fire. This was the beginning of something bigger. What nobody else saw was how every evening I walked that land. Checked the dam, the gates, listened to the creek and the wind, watched the pumps tick like clockwork. Too normal, now that I look back. And scattered around the place were the cameras, paranoid, Bethany called them, motion activated and recording everything. Bethany leaned close, dropped her voice. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you weren't inside." She said it like she meant, "I wish you had been." Then she walked away, headlights glancing off the old coal ranch, EST 1953 sign by my gate. Marcus lingered. You all right, Remy? No, but I'm standing. State fire investigators coming at first light. We'll see what they find. They'll find what they're supposed to find. I muttered. What's that mean? He asked. I just watched the fire creep along the siding. Not random, not wild. Means this wasn't an accident. And I know exactly who'll be first in line to point the finger. Bethany's taillights vanished down toward the lakefront. My cabin cracked inward, sparks flaring. The question hit me like a slap. If Bethany really cared about safety, why was she the first to show up with accusations? That fire wasn't the start of my trouble. Not by a long shot. 6 months earlier, the ridge was just quiet. Wind in the pines, lake water, and the scent of roses my wife had planted before the flood took her. I was repairing a fence, the last project we'd designed together. A spot for morning coffee, trout rising in the silver water. I just set the last post when a car door slammed behind me, a sound that didn't belong. Silver SUV, chrome clean even after the muddy track. Out stepped Bethany, coral jacket again, and a tall guy in a neon vest, clipboard in hand, looking like he was checking off scavenger hunt boxes. We receive a report about an unapproved structure. I grinned, leaning on my hammer. It's a fence, not a structure. 6'2", she snapped back. Bylaw states 6, maximum. Doesn't apply. My land's older than Ridgewater Lakefront HOA. You can't govern property you don't own. She didn't like that. She barely glanced at my deed before giving it back. Several of our residents have raised issues about your improvements. You mean the fence my wife designed? Her face flickered. Irritation, impatience. We simply want compliance, Remy. Everyone else follows the rules. I looked down at the water. New vacation homes had popped up, all glass rails, metal roofs, people who'd never seen a real Montana winter. They wanted my ridge because they couldn't build any higher. Funny, I said. My wife and I never signed anything about Ridgewater Lakefront when we bought this place. She took a breath, trying to stay professional. Perhaps you didn't look carefully enough. The association is expanding. The clipboard guy snapped his tape, ready to mark it for removal. No, I said, you're on my land. That tape comes down. Bethany's hand went up. You can't threaten HOA personnel. Didn't threaten anyone. Just don't trespass. The ridge went quiet. A hawk circled. She cleared her throat. You'll receive a formal notice. Failing to respond means escalating fines. As they left, the wind pushed through the cedars, and I saw something strange, stamped along the tape measure. Ridgewater Lakefront Expansion Project. Lot development surveying. They weren't after aesthetics. They were after land. My land. A week later, a glossy envelope stuffed in my mailbox. Ridgewater Lakefront Association, bold letters. Notice of community noncompliance. 3 violations. My boat shed, I didn't have one. Livestock count exceeded. Regulations didn't apply to my land. And non-aesthetic rose garden. My wife's roses. Every day, new violation letters stacked up. Illegal compost, unsafe dam railing, unauthorized vegetation. All sharp-cornered. Expensive paper, threatening escalating fines, legal action. I logged every one. Old engineer habits die hard. Then came the sheriff. Marcus, hat in hand, folder thick as a phone book. 23 complaints in 19 days, all from the HOA. I stared out the window at the lake. You believe him? Doesn't matter. I'm obligated to check. They're getting loud, organized, got money, but I know who was here first, he said. He hesitated. Developers are poking around again. If they make your land look unsafe, my blood chilled. So this is all about pushing me out. No, Remy, but it's not about compliance either. That night, sorting through my growing stack of letters, it hit me. This wasn't random. It was a strategy. Push me until I caved, until I gave up my ridge. And then, on a stormy night, it got worse. The wind was up, sky dark and flickering. I did my rounds, checking the dam. But the water line had dropped 2, maybe 3 inches. Shouldn't happen on a cold night. At the lower gate, I found fresh tire tracks, lock hanging crooked forced. Rain coming down, I jogged to the dam housing. Valve half open, muddy boot prints. One set small, Bethany-sized. Another heavier. If they'd opened it all the way, it'd have caused a flood. Unsafe infrastructure, community at risk, exactly what Bethany needed for a county intervention. My security camera caught two figures, one in HOA maintenance gear, one in a contractor's vest. They fiddled with the valves, gestured to the lake, then vanished. At dawn, an email from Bethany. Formal safety complaint. Hazard filed at 4:17 a.m. That's when I knew this wasn't personal. This was an orchestrated setup. I needed help. So I went to Walt Henderson, old-timer, lived on this land before the HOA even existed. Told him everything. He wasn't surprised. This isn't random, Walt said. They push out folks who can't fight back. Pick them off one by one. He handed me a thick envelope. Archive violation letters, emails, patterns matching mine. You're next because you've got the ridge, the piece they need. As if on cue, an HOA truck rolled up, clipboard guy, routine check. Walt grunted, routine my foot. The very next day, certified letter, urgent emergency inspection, mandatory access. Right at 3, HOA inspector arrives, clipboard, no county badge, boots spotless. He documented harmless things, ignored my deed, called my fence non-compliant. I recorded every second, got him on camera, saying he worked for Bethany Reed. He didn't like that. Documentation goes further, I said, and he left in a hurry. That evening, Sarah Mitchell showed up, sharp, determined, satchel full of maps, emails, and the HOA's own financials. She slid a blueprint across my table. Phase 3, expansion over my ridge. They want you gone, she said. Once your land is deemed unsafe, the HOA petitions the county. Enough violations, they could force condemnation. Then she handed me the smoking gun, a memo, Bethany's handwriting. If Cole's Ridge cannot pass safety review, we proceed with planned acquisition. The inspector wasn't licensed, had been paid directly by the HOA. Sarah's advice was clear: document everything. Let them hang themselves with their own rope. 2 days later, she found even more development plans, expansion blueprints, emails about documenting hazards. And the biggest punch, an insurance claim filed by Bethany 2 weeks before the fire for projected damage from a blaze originating near the ridge. They weren't waiting for a fire. They were counting on one. The night my cabin burned, I'd been planning my next move, but they made theirs first. Security footage caught it all. 2 figures, one Bethany's shape, circling the barn, pouring lines of fuel, hooking a trigger rig to the generator. Bethany walked away, never even glanced back as the fire flared up behind her. Her insurance claim predicted it to the day. The lockbox survived, deed copies, backup drives, proof of everything. When Marcus called, I told him, "You need to come up here. I have footage." He arrived with a warrant. A week later, the courtroom was packed. Locals, state investigators, reporters. Sarah played the footage, showed the insurance claim, presented the inspector's fake credentials, and the county's report clearing my property just months before. Judge Clark's verdict was ice cold. A full criminal investigation into the Ridgewater Lakefront Association, immediate suspension of all their powers, and charges for arson, fraud, tampering, conspiracy. Bethany tried to shout me down, but her evidence was dust in the wind. By week's end, the state moved in, froze the HOA's funds, arrested Bethany and her crew. They let her out in handcuffs, her glare fixed on the blackened outline of my cabin. I didn't watch the arrest. Didn't need to. I just stood on my ridge, hands in my pockets, feeling something I hadn't felt since before this all started. Relief. Justice, or maybe just karma, rolling through the pines. The federal grant, restitution, neighbors who'd once doubted me, now dropping off food and lumber. Folks I hardly knew offering to help rebuild. The Ridgewater HOA was dissolved, the marina expansion canceled, the law changed to protect people like me. By spring, we raised the final beam on my new cabin. Sarah came by, smiled. "Looks like home again." "It will be. You know, you can burn a house, but you can't burn the truth." The lake agreed, still quiet, dignified. "So, have you ever had to stand your ground against someone who thought they could take what was yours?" Drop a yes in the comments. Or just type justice if you know what it feels like to fight for what's right. Stories like this remind us, truth may bend, but it doesn't break. And if you want more HOA showdowns and ranch-side justice, hit subscribe. I'll be glad to have you along for the next ride.